I grew up in Bangalore, a city which is not too far from here, and a city which has developed a reputation to change and transform itself every few years. The Bangalore that I grew up in had these tree-lined avenues, shops that were run by mothers and fathers, a rhythm that almost felt unhurried. Later, the glass towers arised. Those tree-lined avenues were replaced by flyovers. That unhurried pace of life was replaced by traffic jams. And those mom and pop stores that I talked about were replaced by tech parks. The scale of change was massive. India's garden city was becoming India's Silicon Valley. But what really, truly caught my attention was not really the scale or the speed of the change. It was the fact that the change was very uneven. I saw families actually flourish because of these changes, but I also saw families that got completely decimated under the burden of this growth. I saw communities flourish just because they were close to a new flyover that was coming up, but also communities completely lose out because they lost land in the process. I did not have the language to parse this then. As a teenager, I didn't quite understand what was happening, but it was causing a little bit of a storm underneath. Today, after years I've started off studying and practicing policy, I figured it was actually the invisible hand of public policy at play. It's not the invisible hand that Adam Smith talked about, the invisible hand of markets, right? This is the hand which decides which street gets a metro station. This is the hand that decides what you read in your textbooks. This is the hand that decides who gets a tax break and who doesn't. This is the power of policy. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it, right? And you'll start to notice this everywhere. The price of your morning coffee, the bus route that you take, the traffic that you face, it's everywhere. It's policy decisions that are shaping our life day in and day out. As it turns out, it is the framework and the architecture of our daily life. Now, this is not just true for Bangalore. The story that I just described is something actually we've seen world over, right? Poverty has come down from 30%, extreme poverty has come down from 30% to 9%. And let's look at the last 25 years, right? We had 400 million people that were online in the year 2000. Today, 5 billion. We had one malaria death every half a minute in 2000s. Today, we have half that rate. The cost of genome sequencing in 2000s would have costed an apartment in Manhattan. Today, it's probably a weekend in Goa. We've made tremendous amount of progress. A student, a teenager sitting in Singapore, Surathkal, San Francisco, wherever, can actually, live stream the launch of SpaceX. Can also potentially take a course from MIT on coding. And forget everything, right to a head of state, right to the President of the United States, right to the Prime Minister of India on what they think, and actually even get a response. That ceiling of progress that we have seen today is unmistakable. But while that ceiling of progress is there, the ground beneath us also seems to be shaking. The carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere today are the highest they've ever been in millions of years. We have some 50, 60 plus wars which are currently underway, big or small, but 50, 60 wars. Wars have become a normal tool of policy these days. We are seeing pandemics completely ravage and stop countries, bring the world to a standstill. The richest 1% today holds something like 40% of the new wealth that exists. Technology, IT, AI threatens at least a quarter of the jobs that exist today. No wonder there's also a sense of anxiety and unease in the world today, right? All of this seems to be a little confused. So the real question as a policymaker or an advisor in the policy world for me is not so much that we are seeing progress, is not so much that there is chaos. The question is, who is the progress serving? All of this might seem very, new, very shocking and unclear to all of us, but the truth is we've been here. In the Industrial Revolution, Charles Dickens actually wrote this the best. It was the best of the time and it was the worst of the times. We're somewhere there today where we're seeing this great aspiration, great opportunity, but we're also seeing this great anxiety, this great ambiguity. Right? The truth is, every technological leap that has ever happened in the society has led to the rewriting of the rules in the society. What is certainly different this time is the scale and the speed. Remember Bangalore? What happens when the scale and speed moves at the pace that it is moving today is there's a fundamental shift. The principles, the foundations that underline these architectures and the frameworks that we live in do not hold anymore. It requires a first principles rethinking of what the world is going to look like. So to imagine what comes next, I believe there are three choices that we must make. Not as governments, not as experts, but as a generation that is living through this, which will decide how we shape our collective future. The first choice is technology. And the choice is really between design and destiny. How do we think of technology? I'll invite all of you to think of technology beyond just efficiency and effectiveness, or set more sophisticatedly doing things right and doing the right things. Right? Technology is actually a disruptive force, and not necessarily a bad one. Think about Airbnb, think about Uber. Through the sheer dint of technology, what we were able to do, what these companies were able to do, was append decades-old capital-intensive models, right? And make them a capital-light model. They disrupted industries. So the question for us today is, what would this look like in government, right? Given everything that we know about governments today, hundreds of years, at least since Max Weber, 2-3 centuries ago, we've learned so much about governments and bureaucracies. Everything that we know about technology and technology implementation today. If we had the opportunity to reimagine government, start from scratch, a white slate, to redesign governments, what would that government look like? This is a project that we are picking up at the Tony Blair Institute right now. And trust me, it is not an incremental embedding of technology into governance. It's a complete reimagination of what governments mean to people, what government mean to businesses, and what governments mean to other governments in the world. It's a rewrite of the grammar of governance. For this to happen, we will need technologists who understand policy, and we need policymakers who understand code. Because the invisible hand of technology will only serve humanity when the visible hand of policy is guiding it. The second choice is how we see jobs and job losses. Jobs, since its inception, have served two core purposes. One is subsistence, the second one is meaning. Subsistence is money to survive, to serve our needs, and meaning is to serve our deep psychological need of identity. As the world moves towards a gig economy, where jobs are being replaced by AI, where global mobility becomes easier because of people using Zoom and other digital platforms, jobs will no longer be able to provide both those things in the same way. Neither financial security nor human identity. So whether it is healthcare, whether it is pension, whether it is lifelong learning, or whether it is universal basic income, all of these will have to be rethought. They will have to, not be the sole proprietary of employers or national boundaries, but something that moves along with people. It's a complete reimagination of what jobs are. And that will leave two big questions. How will we fund a universal basic income or something like a social safety net? Perhaps maybe through the AI dividends that come from the very machines that are replacing people. But I think another bigger question will be around human identity, which is centered today around jobs. What would be that replacement? How would we help people still maintain meaning in a world where jobs no longer become the primary source of identity? That is the second choice our generation has to make. The third choice, I think, is how do you think of cooperation in this very, very fragmented world that we live in today? In geopolitics, the concentration of power amongst different countries gives rise to different patterns, ranging from a unipolar hegemon to a bipolar era, or a multipolar existence to a utopian where nations all have equal power. This exact configuration is a little bit of part dependence. It depends on history. But a lot of it is also engineering and something that is designed very consciously. Now, since the Industrial Revolution, the primary currencies in geopolitics in global order have been two. It's been economic heft and military power. This gave rise to a world which was primarily swinging between a unipolar and a bipolar world, and with the exception of countries like India, which were charting out their own path through that non-aligned movement. But today, that power, that currencies have changed. Economic heft remains, military might remains, but there are two new currencies. One, of course, is technology. The other is demographic dividend. With these four powers, we're arriving on a stage where the world could actually have an opportunity to get into a multipolar order, where countries coordinate amongst themselves across different groupings and across different topics. It can mean agile coalitions will come into existence. 20% of the countries might own 85% of the production on vaccine. 10 countries might become the biggest centers of rare earth metals. 5 countries might decide what ID systems need to look like for the rest of humanity. The tables might get smaller, but the stakes are only going to get bigger. And that's the next generation of global governance. It's not going to be hierarchical, it is going to be networked, where you don't brush competition under the carpet, but you actually celebrate it, you make it a tool of collaboration and acknowledge it. Now, whether it is the description of Samudra Manthan or whether it is the Industrial Revolution, the social contract between people and its government has been rewritten, and has been rewritten after every great shock, every massive technological change. It is being rewritten today, whether you like it or you not. The question, therefore, again is, who is it favoring? If we act with foresight today, 25 years from now, in 2050, we might look back at this decade as that golden age when we made the right decisions that set us up to a path of success. If we flounder, this will become an anthology of preventable crises very, very soon. Transformation never happens by chance. It's not an accident. It's a choice that people make. Very few people make, but indeed people make. The invisible hand of policy only works when it is guided by the visible minds and hearts of people who care to act enough. That, I hope, will be you. Thank you.